Chapter 8. Connor! Martha beat her fist so hard against the front door that the whole porch shook. Almost all at once, a light came on, and as Connor let her in, Martha fell on him, her eyes wild. Connor, there's someone in my room! Call the police! Hurry! She hurtled past him, only to stop again, spinning around in horror. What's the matter with you? Someone's up there? I can't go by myself. Looking totally baffled, Connor went obediently up the stairs and straight to Martha's bedroom. As she huddled outside in the hall, he turned on her light and checked the closet, and then stood in the middle of her floor looking around. There's nothing here. There was something here. Someone here. Connor, I saw them. She was still in the hallway, afraid to walk through the door, and Connor came out again, eyeing her curiously. I didn't have my key, and you wouldn't let me in, so I went around to the back to see if you were in the bathroom, and there was this light in my room, and someone was at my window. She crossed to the window then and looked out, searching the shadowy lawn below. He was here, right here, looking out, and she wheeled around and faced Connor, who was watching her in silence. Why wouldn't you let me in? She asked tightly. His face was unreadable, not even a sign of denial. He just stood there, his deep blue eyes full on hers. After a long moment, his shoulders stirred slightly. Martha, maybe we'd better talk about this in the morning after. After what? After you have another chance to scare me to death? The scarecrow, the graveyard, the fire? Why are you looking at me like that? Excuse me, said Connor. I'll see you tomorrow when your sanity comes back. Martha felt dangerously close to tears, but Connor's face hadn't changed. You knew I didn't have a house key tonight, and you figured I'd try the back door, and you stood up here and watched me. Watched you do what? This time his mouth twitched, but not in amusement, more in a battle for patience. Martha stepped away from him, her mind racing. Could there be another phone line in the house that I don't even know about? Her mind faltered and went blank. I don't even know what I'm thinking anymore. I'm not even thinking at all. I am a stranger, and it hasn't done me a bit of good. Not that I'm looking, Martha added hastily. And I'd love to introduce you to Connor, only, she broke off frowning. How could she share her suspicions about Connor when Blake had asked her not to mention the house to Win? I'm too nervous, Win said innocently. Martha, you're sweet to offer, and who wouldn't want to know Connor better? She dropped her eyes and cast Martha a troubled look. Number one, I don't want you to think you're my friend just because of Connor. Martha looked surprised. I never thought to think that. Win nodded relieved. Good. Some girls would, though. But I'm not like that. Friends are important to me. An ache went through Martha's heart as Win turned her face away. For one moment, she wrestled with the idea of admitting that she knew about Elizabeth Bedford. But luckily, Win saved her. Martha, my best friend died last year. You might have heard about it, because the town's full of stories, except nobody really talks to me about it, because they don't want to upset me. Only I wish they would talk to me about it, because the truth is, well, I don't remember. Martha stopped, only half conscious that the wind was whipping her hair around her face. She pulled a strand from the corner of her mouth and thought how sad Win's eyes looked as she stared back at her. I don't, Win said again. I wish I did, but I don't remember a lot. She started walking again, and Martha's legs moved mechanically, trying to keep up. They sent me to a doctors, you know, and one even hypnotized me, but I still can't remember much about that night. People say I found my friend Elizabeth and that someone had killed her. She tucked her arms around herself, and her face was plaintive like a little girl. But Martha, I really can't remember. I remember terrible, horrible fear and the long dark. Martha was interested. What's that? The long dark? But Win gave an irritated shrug. Just dark. Darkness that went on and on forever. Martha thought a moment, picturing the house. The dark shadows, the dark corners, the dark secrets. You can't imagine how awful it is. Win drew a shaky breath, trying so hard, but just nothing comes. Up Main Street past rows of old-fashioned shops. Win's face was still troubled, but as she glanced over at Martha again, a slow smile began to replace the pain. That's why I acted funny yesterday when we came to pick you up at your house. I just haven't been back there for such a long time, but I worried about it. I didn't want you to think it was you or anything. Martha reached over and gave her a hug. I didn't think that, and thanks for telling me. For a second, Win looked like she might cry, and Martha added quickly, we don't ever have to talk about it. You don't ever have to come. But to her surprise, Win shook her head. No, that's just it. I want to talk about it. I need to, and I want to come to your house too. I have to get up the nerve. Whenever you want, it's okay, and then you can tell me if the house is really evil or if Connor's trying to drive me out of my mind. There were so many questions Martha was dying to ask, but instead she said, I've never been to this part of town before. Wynn seemed ready to change the subject. It's the original downtown. Take my word for it. Nothing's any different than it was when we were kids. In fact, it's probably the same as it was 100 years ago. Wynn gave her a glance that was almost apologetic. I bet you feel so trapped here after Chicago. I bet you had millions of things to do back there. Martha thought a moment, smiling. There were lots of places to go. Now that I'm gone, I wish I'd done more. But what do you do here? You know, for fun. Well, you saw the pizza place. Everyone either hangs out there or this other place called Marty's. It's right at the edge of town, and they have a band. Oh, I love music. You wouldn't like this. They're not very good, and they never learn any new songs. I mean, after they play the same old stuff 3 times in a row, it gets boring. Martha laughed. Okay, forget Marty's. What else? Clubs at school, and school dances, sports naturally, and church. Wynn made a face. It's really, really the pits. She glanced towards a storefront window and suddenly pulled Martha over to the display. Oh, look, don't you love that sweater? It looked great on you. Go try it on. Martha tugged on her arm, but Wynn held back. No, I'd only get depressed. Depressed? Why? Wynn shook her head. If you were as shapeless as me, you'd never ask that question. Look at me. I have, Martha pinched at her own ribs. Lots of insulation. In all the right places. Listen, I still remember a few years back when everyone was getting measured in gym class. Afterwards, I found out my chest and Blake's were the same. You're kidding. Martha couldn't help herself. She doubled over with laughter while Wynn looked on helplessly. Would I kid about something like that? I'll never get over it as long as I live. They both started laughing then, harder than ever, and after several moments, Wynn finally caught her breath. Oh, well, not that there's anyone around here to impress anyway. You just can't get too excited about guys you've known since kindergarten. No mystique. Martha straightened up slowly, holding her aching sides. I guess I never thought about that. There were always new kids coming and going where I lived. Wynn studied her with a smile that was almost shy. I'll bet you had lots of boyfriends, didn't you? They were walking again, side by side, and Martha looked up at the gray sky, sudden memories making her frown. A couple. God, I was stupid, though. What do you mean? Martha cast Wynn a sidelong glance, kicking at some crumpled paper on the sidewalk. The wind caught it and flew it crazily through the air, snagging at last at the foot of the fire hydrant. There was this one guy who really liked me, and he was nice, too, and cute, and, well, my dad thought he was wonderful and was thrilled we were going out. Wynn nodded as if she knew what was coming. But I liked this other guy more. He was so cool and so handsome. Martha gave a guilty laugh. And he was such a jerk. Wynn stopped and turned abruptly that Martha ran into her. That's what people said about Dennis, too. Her eyes were wide and serious. That's just like Dennis and Elizabeth. Startled, Martha watched Wynn walk away and then took a deep breath and hurried after her. Wynn! The girl stopped, shoulders rigid, hands clenched at her sides. As Martha slowed down, Wynn suddenly whirled to face her. They're wrong, you know, all of them. Martha stared at her, mind racing. About what? About Dennis! Oh, he could be a real jerk sometimes, and he was always getting into some kind of trouble, and everyone thinks he killed Elizabeth, but he didn't. He couldn't have. He loved her. Wynn's face was almost pleading, and Martha reached out for her. Connor heard they broke up, she said, that Dennis was kind of upset about it. Yes, Wynn was nodding, her eyes closed tight. Her voice suddenly sad. Yes, that's true. They did break up, and he wanted her back, but she didn't want to go back with him. He was jealous, that's all, just because she was with someone else, not with him. But he never would have done something so awful. Wait a minute, Martha interrupted. After they broke up, she had a new boyfriend? Yeah, she went with Blake, Wynn said quietly. And then seeing the look on Martha's face, he never talks about it. He keeps everything in. And when you came and moved into her house, it really shook everyone up. Not just Blake and me, but, well, everybody. Martha was staring at her, Wynn's words reaching her as from a long way off. Wynn, what are you talking about? She was small like you, and her hair was blonde, even about the same length. Wynn's face was sad and apologetic, and Martha felt herself going cold. Even the things you and I laugh about. And you're such a nice person, Martha. You're just so much like her. You remind me so much of Elizabeth.